Tonight, I usually speak about my mental health, but tonight I'm going to speak about my passion, and that is my addiction and my path to recovery. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a history on my life. I was born the middle child, oldest daughter, and with that came a lot of responsibility for me. I grew up in a very abusive home, but I received treatment that my other 4 siblings didn't receive. I was born to an alcoholic father and a mother who suffered from mental health. My father was my very first abuser, and I remember that happening from the age of 4 on, until I found my father dead at 7.5 years old. When I found my father dead, my mother and my father were not together. And I had to call my mother and tell my mother that my father was dead. I had to try to convince her. I also had to call EMS. And then we were sent next door because my parents were not together. And 3 of us were with my father. And we watched them take my father's dead body out. My mother did not come to get us. And we were sent to foster care, my sister and I together, and my brother separately. And we didn't see my mother again for 8 months. When my mother came to get us, she had a new boyfriend. And he sat me on his lap and he told me that he was my new father. And I knew exactly what that meant. And that continued on until I was 14 years old, except my mother was also one of my abusers. Because my mother was my abuser mentally, physically, and emotionally. And my stepfather was my abuser mentally, physically, and emotionally. Until I was 14 years old and I, got the idea, well, if he touches me again, I can call the cops. The safest I ever felt in my childhood was when I was about 9 years old and my brother, Kevin, set the house on fire in the middle of the night, because mental health runs rampant in my family. And he had heard my dead father's voice in his head telling him to do this. So that's exactly what he did while we were sleeping. And he woke me up, and I was only 9 at the time, and I luckily had enough in me to wake my mother up, and we all made it out with about 5 minutes to spare before the house collapsed to the ground. And then we had to go live with my grandparents. And I knew at my grandparents' house I would be safe. And that's the safest I felt in my childhood, because I knew my grandparents would not see anything happen to me, except for the 2 weeks that I got to go to camp. When I was also about 9 years old, myself and my 2 other older brothers were sent out to work the cedar bushes. And my job was to haul cedar trees until I was 14 years of age. That's how my summers were spent. When I was about 19 years old, people started questioning, why doesn't Barb have a boyfriend? And I never could look at a guy and go, that looks good. Ooh, I think I like that. It's not for me. But I grew up in a family that didn't understand that. And I was always looking for my mother's approval, for my mother's love, and I could never get that. So I did what was expected of me. I was the oldest daughter. I was expected to get married. I was expected to have a family. So that's exactly what I did, because I wanted her approval. I wanted her love. So I got married. I was never supposed to have children, but I was lucky enough to have a child. He's my miracle. And, but when I was about 29, I started feeling like my skin crawled every time he came near me. And I stopped sleeping with him. And when I was 31, I told him, I've got to leave. I can't do this anymore. And I told him, and he begged me to stay with him. And that's just cruel. And then I told my son, the way mommy likes girls is the way that normally a man and a woman like each other. And he said, at 9 years old, you're still my mommy and I love you anyway. And that gave me the green light to go. And I did. With nobody in mind. I had nobody in mind. I just knew I needed to live my life. So I started that. In my mid-30s, my mother got very ill. And she lived 6.5 hours away. And we got word that she wasn't going to make it through the night. So my brother said, Barb, we're going to go and we're gonna pick you up. And I had a lot of conflict with my mom. I wanted my chance to say goodbye. But they left without me. And I didn't know until it was too late. So they were all around her bedside when she passed away, except for me. And they said that she could hear. That's still something hard for me, because I know my mom knows I wasn't there. And so by the time I figured out that they had left without me, there was no more buses going to Cornwall, and I had to wait till the next morning. So I arrived at the bus station, the GO bus station here, at 5:30 in the morning. I called my oldest brother to say, I'm here, I'm ready to leave. And my sister-in-law told me, your mother passed away 45 minutes ago. So I arrived in Cornwall very angry and very resentful. And when I saw my brother, I wanted to go after him, but my oldest brother held me back. So the next day, before I viewed my mother's dead body, my oldest brother said, I'm going to take you 30 minutes before anybody else, so you can say your goodbyes. It still wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to be there with everybody else. But I got to go, but before I went, my mother's best friend of her entire life said to me, you know, your mother never loved you, and she never approved of you. Well, that just sealed it. That just validated everything that I had felt my entire life. So when I came back to Hamilton, I had a friend who was struggling with addiction. And I was really naive about addiction. And I was the first one to look down on anyone who had an addiction. My youngest brother was smoking marijuana, and I would make him bury that crap before he even entered my house. I'm like, go bury it outside, you're not coming in with it. But when I came back, I didn't know how to handle all the pain and all the hurt. It was so intense, and I isolated because I didn't conform to my family. I was not one of those people when you said, oh, look at how pretty the purple sky is, and I wasn't the one saying, yes, look how pretty it is. I'd be like, it's not purple. It's gray, or it's blue. But the rest of my family would be like, yes, it's so beautifully purple, look at it. And I was always the one who was like, no, it's not. And so my family didn't like that about me. And they still don't, some of them. But that's okay, because I tell my truth, because that is my freedom. I take my power back. So when I came back to Hamilton, my friend who was struggling with addiction, who has now passed away from an overdose, said, here, Barb, you know, this is going to make all those feelings that you're feeling, this is going to make that all go away. And I said to her, I said, if that's a chemical, I'm not going to touch that stuff. And it was a chemical. But I didn't know it. I was so naive to what crack cocaine was. But it did exactly what she said it was going to do. It made me not think. It made me not feel. And it took all that pain and all that suffering and all those feelings of, I want my fucking mother back. I want to talk to her. I want her to know that I loved her. I want to hear her say she loved me too. I want to hear her say she did love me and that she did approve of me. But I'm never going to get that. So every time I tried to stop, that pain that was 100 times worse got 1,000 times worse. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, so I had to use more and more and more. And then I isolated, because my family didn't want nothing to do with me. Every time I got angry with them, they were just like, oh, Barb, you're blowing it all up. Did you get to say goodbye to your mother? Did your mother do this to you? Or did Dad do that to you? No. It wasn't done to you, it was done to me. But I'm here to tell you, I am nobody's victim. I am a survivor. I am a survivor. I stand here today, a survivor. My journey through recovery hasn't necessarily been an easy one. I've stumbled along the way, and I've stumbled hard. But I've had a lot of love. I follow a 12-step program. I'm in a 12-step program. I went to treatment in 2008 for the first time. And I only went because of what my son said to me. My son said, you know what, Mom, you're already dead. You're already Your grave is already dug. We're just waiting for you to fall in. And that's because my 17-year-old son watched a woman that he knew as a nurturing woman become 125 pounds, watch her teeth fall out of her face, watch her skin become gray and pale, become absent. Where was that loving woman gone? She wasn't there anymore. She was a ghost. I had guns put to my head. There was one time a gun was put to my head and I dared the guy to pull the trigger. I'm like, pull that fucking trigger or get it away from my head. He goes, you're one brave bitch, and he put it down. Only one time did I beg, and that's because someone that I love very much was with me, got caught up in it. And I begged them, please let this person out of the car. You do whatever you want with me, but please let this person out of the car. And thank God it didn't end up bad. I've had grown men try to beat me. I became a dealer. I didn't care if you had to feed your kid the next morning, put milk in their mouth. I didn't care. I was one of those people who would give you your tester to get you going if I knew that you could bring me money. That's the low life I was in addiction. But I was sick. I also suffer from mental health issues. You know, I have PTSD. I have a major depression, anxiety, panic attacks. We all know that mental health and addiction go hand in hand. Nobody gave me coping tools as a child, so I found my own in life. And I was sick. And thank the good Lord, I found my way out. I found my way into recovery because I came into the rooms of a 12-step program where people, when I was falling down at my feet, they helped stand me back up. They picked me up when I was falling. Service work is extremely important to me because I wouldn't be here, I'm sure of it, without it. I'm part of this amazing organization. I sit on the Hamilton's Drug Strategy Board. I go into the jails, I go into the women's withdrawal management because it's important for me to share my story. Because even if one person gets it, one, if it can help save one life or put the seed and give the thought to one person that maybe they are worth it, then it's all worth it. We are all worth a life worth living here, each and every single one of us. Not one of us is less than, and not one of us is more than. We all walk on equal footing in this world. Thank you.